Happy Friday. All right, so I want to dive into some housing data for single family homes in King County. I'm going to share my screen. Cool, I think you see this now. Awesome. All right, so I want to first start off with giving you guys a historical perspective because I think it's important. So we got average sales price in orange. We've got months of supply, which is the absorption rate in blue, and we got the average 30-year mortgage rate in gray, and then the light gray shaded box represents the 4 to 5 months of supply that is needed to be considered a balanced market. So the big takeaways from this is notice that uh, since like late 2011, early 2012, the market in King County has been well under that 4 to 5 months of supply when looking at the blue line. The last period of time that we had remotely a balanced market was back in 2018, 2019. And this was during this period of time, the Federal Reserve was also increasing the Fed fund rate. Interest rates went up a little bit, inventory built. And so, a lot of housing analysts will look at that 2018 to 2019 period as the most normal housing market that we've had in the last decade. The second thing is notice that there is a correlation between months of supply and interest rates. You can see that as interest rates go up, the absorption rate decline, aka the months of supply goes up. And when interest rates fall, the absorption rate increases, aka the months of supply line goes down. And so here again, interest rates climb quickly, the absorption rate climbs. So there's historically been a correlation that it doesn't necessarily mean that when interest rates go down, all these sellers are going to now feel comfortable, giving up their low interest rate, putting their houses on the market, and we're going to see all this inventory, and we're going to be, finally balanced. Historically speaking, what ends up happening is that it stimulates demand, and because we're working from like very low levels of supply, that demand essentially eats up that inventory faster than we're able to put enough inventory on the market to get to a balanced state. And this is sort of the catch 22 that we find ourselves in, is that it's over the last decade, it has proven very difficult for us to get to balanced levels. I mean, even in that second half of the year when interest rates and inflation really started to rise, and inventory built, you can see, we were working from very low levels, and we saw statistically large year-over-year changes, right? But the reality is that we, here's 2 months of supply, and that's sort of where we topped out as a county for single family homes. And then since it's actually declined and then stabilized here. So, it's for those of you that think that, once interest rates come down, we're going to have a lot more inventory because a lot of people are going to be willing to sell. That doesn't necessarily ring true when you look at the data. And then the other thing that I want to show you is that there's a correlation between months of supply and prices. When the months of supply statistic increases, you'll see a decrease in price. Like, for example, if you look at the 2018 period here, you can see that the months of supply is increasing, meaning the absorption rate of the available inventory is declining, and therefore the prices cooled off. And that essentially has been the case. And it makes sense, right? When you've got the absorption rate cooling, less people are eating up all those homes on the market. Therefore, you would expect prices, days on market, sales price ratios to decline. And indeed, that's historically what's happened. And you can see that here. During this period of time when interest rates really were declining and then bottomed out in 2021, early 2022, you can see, like, look at the price growth here. And then especially in January to April, this is that first quarter of 2022. It was like everybody was in this, last ditch effort to lock in with these low interest rates. And so you can see the correlation there. So anyway, that is the historical perspective. And it's so funny. So you look at, like, back in late 2011 is 2012 is right about when the real estate market started to recover, and the average sales price for a house was like just under 400,000. And now, as of January 2022, just 10 years later, it's $1,031,000. So that is, the power of real estate over time. Cool. All righty. So let's just kind of look at, things a little bit, closer here. So as of June 2023, we're at 1.2 months of supply. So the absorption rate is actually equal to where we were last year, but you can see the absorption rate actually was decelerating last year, because last year this time, interest rates were really climbing and demand cratered. But now I think as the year goes on, we're going to see the absorption rate probably stay steady, which means that we'll probably have higher absorption rates or lower months of supply here going for the remainder part of the year. And then here, I have price segments, and you can see, I've got the under $1 million and 1 to 2 million. And you can see that the months of supply has been dropping for these price points. And so this tells me, okay, prices are probably increasing, days on market is shrinking, and sales price ratios are climbing, and it's becoming more competitive. If we look at just, if we go 2 to 3 million price point, you can see that not so severe, but definitely the absorption rate slowed down, but then, it's definitely picked up a little bit. If we go 4 million to 5 million plus, a little bit different. Once you start getting into these price points, it's just a different market. But this looks pretty stable to me, the 4 to 5 million. The 5 million plus, I think there's just less people out there that can afford those prices. But overall, statistically, as a county, 1.2 months is a seller's market. I mean, there's no way around it. And again, at 1.2 months, we have so much further to go to get to that 4-month minimum. Even at like 3.5 months, which is where we sort of were, we were closer to 3 months back in 2018. That still was good for our market here. I think it's because we're so undersupplied that 3 months is even a more balanced market. Cool. So active listings. So this shows you like how many listings we actually had. So as of June, we're at 2,217 active listings. And you can see we're actually, significantly uh, below where we were at last year. And just steady growth. Nothing insane is happening here. Whereas last year things were accelerating because properties were staying on the market longer because prices, the affordability was getting worse and worse as interest rates accelerated. But we're year over year actually. Back in May was sort of the inflection point where we became finally year over year negative. I expect that we're going to have less and less active listings on the market as the year goes on if you just follow sort of what happens seasonally here. When we look at the price segments, let's pull up here. First three. You can see, we have definitely a spike in active listings. It sharply fell. And let me pull this guy out of the way here. But active listings is definitely down compared to where we were a year ago in all three of these categories. If we look at the upper end of the price segments, you can see that the difference in total active listings isn't as high in the upper end. Actually, the 3 to 4 million is there are more listings on the market in the 3 to 4 million. You can see in the 5 million plus, we've got more listings. And then the 4 to 5, we have, let's see, where did June come in? May, June. So pretty close to where we were. I think, 37 in June this year versus 43 in June last year. Pretty similar. So a lot more stable in that 4 to 5 million. Which is interesting. Maybe there's just more people that are, in that $4 to $5 million category versus 3 to 4. Don't really know, but that's the case there. Cool. So new listings. Look at so you can see, like, in terms of new listings hitting the market, this is the worst year that we've had in the last 5 years. We're at 2,537 versus last year we had 3,859. So the pace of new inventory hitting the market is happening at a much slower pace. I'm not going to do the segment thing for now. I'm just going to keep going with King County because this video would be way too long. So pending listings. You can see here that in that first half, pending listings last year did well because people were capitalizing on the low rates before they really started to accelerate. Because back in June last year, that's sort of when the market really saw this correction and demand cratered and active inventory built. So this makes sense. You can see that the pending listings, these are real buyers going under contract with houses. Nothing crazy is happening here, but it's pretty stable. And when we look at where we are versus where we were last year, we're pretty darn close. There's not really a big difference here. And I would expect that we either follow suit with the trend last year, or we may actually end up slightly positive on pending sales. And part of that is I think buyers are just sort of getting more and more used to the fact that it will probably moderate in the 6.5 to 7%. You know, that all depends on what's going on with inflation, what the Fed does, but that seems to be the most likely scenario there. Closed sales. So we definitely, again, probably the worst year in 5 years for closed sales. Makes sense when you've got uh less active listings and less new listing inventory. We may see this number start to go positive, especially because pending sales seem to be right about in line with where we were last year. We may end up seeing more closed sales year over year, but it looks like we will probably be close to where we were in 2022. But we're definitely down year over year. All right, so this is the really interesting part. So average sales prices. So as of June, the average sales price for King County single family homes was 1,171,042. So 1.17 million. And look where we are compared to last year. I mean, here's the average sales price for June last year. We're at 1,182,829. We're talking about like a $10,000 difference, roughly. I think the percentage is, if you calculate this, is like 0.009%. So 0.9%. So we have basically recovered back to where we sort of left off last year in June before the housing correction. And at this point, because buyers seem to be a little bit more used to the higher interest rates, and inventory overall is much lower, that I would assume would put upward pressure on prices. And from here on out, I think we're going to start to see like just slight year over year gains. I don't think we're going to see, anything insane, but this is a, pretty good situation for prices, the way I see it. You can see that it's been pretty steady growth so far this year. This isn't, like what was going on last year, when people were paying, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars over the list price, and properties were just, appreciating at insane amounts. I looked at single family prices from like September of 2021 to February, March of 2022, and prices were going up like 30%. That's not sustainable growth. And so those were just the inflated gains. And if we actually go back to this historical perspective, I can show you what was going on. People in my industry call this the unicorn years. And the reason why they call it that is because you sort of had all the stars aligned. You had extremely low levels of inventory. You can see probably the lowest levels of inventory in the last, 30 years or maybe even ever. And then you had super low interest rates. They didn't quite bottom out during this period of time, but interest rates were very low. So the cost of borrowing money was very low. You had low amounts of inventory. And although it's not on this graph, if you look at a lot of the tech stocks, they like hit all-time highs in late 2021. So you had all of these buyers, most of which in King County, are employed by, Amazon, Facebook, Google, all of these tech companies. They were using their stock portfolios as a means to, put a down payment on a house or bridge a gap in a, low appraisal. And those people that didn't liquidate those tech stocks, by the time things really started changing in the marketplace, their tech stocks like dropped significantly, and they no longer had the purchasing power that they had. And so during this period of time before the correction in the second half, you had a lot of people with a lot of money. It was cheap to get a loan, and there was like no supply. And that's why prices, that's why this line is so steep. That was, I mean, it was the perfect scenario. And I'll just give you an example. I had a house that in Bellevue, in East Bellevue, that I brought on the market. And it was 1740 square feet. It was a split level. They updated things, and we came on the market at just under 1.2 million, and we sold for 1.65 million. And my clients had a non-refundable earnest money deposit of like 250 grand. Boom, right into their bank account. This period of time was just an insane period of time. And I don't think that we're going to get back to that, anytime soon, just because the stars were just aligned, like I said. Now we're dealing with much higher borrowing costs, and you can't get that level of frenzy anymore. So, instead of insane growth with prices, I think we're just going to see steady growth that is basically, what is the word I'm trying to say? Propped up by just the very, very low levels of inventory that we're experiencing today. Okay, so sale price ratio. So this is what a house sold for versus what it was listed for. And this is another good indicator for demand. Anything over 100% means that the house sold for more than what was listed for. Anything under 100% means that the home sold for less. So, for example, as of June this year, the average single-family home sold for 101.7%, meaning the home actually sold for about 1.7% over the original list price. So if we just do the math here and we look at the average sale price for a home in June, let's just go make it easy, 1.17 million, and we multiply that by 0.17%. That's about $19,890 over the list price. That's still positive, which indicates to me that there's not an insane amount of competition, but it's definitely strong. Just to give you a perspective, back in the insanity of it all, the people were paying about 12% on average in King County over the list price. And in Bellevue, that was like, at that time, it was like 30%. It's just insane. So this is a little bit more stable. Again, we're not seeing anything crazy here. But we're not seeing on average this number being less. It's not like as a whole the single family market is suffering and prices, sold prices are typically less than the list price. It's a more stable environment, but leaning more towards the competitive side. All right, so days to sell. So this is how long did it take for a listing to get under contract. And you can see, we're back down to like basically a week. And the reason for that, and you can see like at the beginning of the year, like it started out much higher, but as the year progressed, we're back down to, to the week, to 6 days. And it was really interesting because I was keeping an eye out on properties that came on the market in late 2022 that sat, didn't sell. And then all of a sudden it was like the new year and they ended up with like 2, 3 offers. This is East Bellevue. And I was just like, wow, what are the odds that it was going to sit for a couple of months, 3 months with nothing, no activity, and all of a sudden, like a light switch goes on. They're getting good activity on their showings, and then they end up with multiple offers. And what has happened is that I've noticed that in the beginning of the year, people were like, we have no idea what's going to happen, what the market's going to be like, what the demand's going to be like. And people were not listing their homes with offer review dates, which typically, is like a 5 to 7 day, period of time that, buyers can look at a house and then they ask for all the offers to come in. Well, agents weren't doing that or recommending that at the very beginning of the year because they just weren't sure the demand was going to be there. And it doesn't necessarily look good to have a review date and then, it's still active and you take the review date out. So, as the year went on, by like March, you can really see like we returned to the review dates on listings because you would bring a house on the market and surprise, surprise, you'd have all these people looking at it. And when you've got 6 to 8 people doing pre-inspections and you're expecting 10 offers, it's just much easier to manage that process when you have a review date in there. But we are clearly back down towards the week-long days on market. So definitely another indication that demand is there. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Q3. Last year you can see that the days on market really started to kind of pick up. But with buyers a little bit more used to higher interest rates, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. So very cool. Overall, the single family market really is, I think, just stabilizing. I don't think that there's anything terribly bad or anything like extremely good happening in the market right now. I think it's more of just a stable environment. So if you guys have any more questions on this, you need to know what your home is worth in today's market, or you're a buyer and you want to, talk more about is now a good time, or, should I wait till next year, or, this is my first time buying a house. I have a lot of questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm an open book. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. All right. See you later.